Good day. Welcome to this session of the 2024 College Sports Communicators CSC U Summit. Thanks for joining us on today's day two first session, expanding your game, tips and tricks for learning new sports. Each of our four live sessions this year is hosted by College Sports Communicators CSC U Committee, which is here to assist new communication professionals, undergraduate students, and graduate students and interns interested in sports communications careers and continuing education seminars. The CSEU motto is educating educators and finding our future. I am Colin Terrell, Director of Sports Information and Promotions at the University of Chicago and Chair of the Programming Subcommittee for CSEU, and I will serve as the moderator today for this session. We welcome any questions at any time. Please drop them in the Zoom Q&A, not the chat, the Zoom Q&A section. We'll make sure to get those as the conversation rolls along and as time allows. We got lots to cover, so let's get started. As a reminder, this Zoom will be recorded and be available later on YouTube, the CSC website, so you can watch it on demand as you please. We have an amazing panel ready to talk to you today. Let's go ahead and let them introduce themselves. First is Mike Prang from Adrian College. Mike, how we doing?
Good. How's everyone doing? Thanks for joining. Like you said, I'm Mike Prang. I'm the Sports Information Director at Adrian College. I'm going on my 5th season there. Adrian College is home to 50 athletic programs. I oversee all of them with my staff of 3, and I'm the primary contact for 20 of them.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Next up is Sam Boyle from Carthage College. How are we doing, Sam?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Boyle. I'm at Carthage College. I've been here for going on 6 years. We have 28 sports here at Carthage, and I oversee about 11 of them with a staff of 3.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Last but certainly not least is Sebastian Bush from the City College of New York. How are we doing, Sebastian?
How are you guys? My name is Sebastian Bush. I'm the Assistant Athletic Director for Communications at the City College of New York. I oversee 14 NCAA teams and 3 club sports. And yeah, happy to be here with you guys.
Awesome. We're really excited about today's panel. Yesterday, we covered confidence. We covered writing. Today, we're covering in-game statistics and learning new sports and how to accept positions with sports you might not know. Every school is adding a different array of sports. Every school has a different selection. I don't think no two are really the same when it comes to the individual options that we have. Obviously, there's the overall general ones of football, basketball, but then some have water polo, some have field hockey, some have lacrosse. And that's what we really want to focus on. How can you focus and really learn those sports, get yourself in a good position, feel confident that you can cover them and take on new career opportunities based on those options? So let's get started, guys. We have a lot to cover. Once again, if you have any questions throughout the chat, we will drop them in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them as we roll on. We'll also have time at the very end to answer some questions as well. So feel free to ask those at any times. But Mike, I'll start with you. You said Adrian, obviously you have 50 sports there, which is a large number, a lot of sports that a lot of colleges might not have, some unconventional ones like bags is one of them, cornhole. How do you gravitate or try not to gravitate just towards the flashy sports? Obviously, you have options there that people don't know about or are really uneducated about. How do you really start covering those sports that, you get handed or that are new to the program or to yourself? And how do you kind of wrap your head in that world?
Yeah, you said cornhole is one of them. Some of the other unique sports we have equestrian, bass fishing, rowing and rugby, stuff like that. We have 7 hockey teams at Adrian. It's just kind of the way that I go about my job every day. It's more about the student athlete experience. Obviously you have your flashy sports. When you think college athletics, a lot of times you're thinking football and you're thinking basketball because of March Madness, maybe baseball in between there with College World Series and stuff. But the way that I look at things is I look at it as student athlete experience. So even though we do have a football team, I want to cover those student athletes the best way that I can as well. I also kind of need to look at those unique, maybe less known sports like the equestrian team or the bass fishing team or the cornhole team, and see how can I cover these people as well and still tell their stories just as equally as I tell the football teams and the men's basketball teams and the hockey teams.
Awesome. Sebastian, Sam, obviously you guys have a little bit more conventional options at New College, New York and Carthage. But how do you guys, when you are handling new sports or when you go into a new environment with some sports that you don't necessarily know, how do you gravitate towards some of those sports that you might have to kind of force yourself to learn? What some tips that you've told yourself over the course of your guys' careers to be able to really dive into those worlds? Go ahead,
Uh,
Sebastian. Go, Sam.
sorry. One of those things I've always kind of learned was, your coaches are going to be your best friend in learning these new sports. Just going to the coach right off the bat is, especially with water polo. When I got here, I've never covered water polo before, so I went to my coach, who was here at the time, and just kind of told him, "Hey, I'm your primary contact. I don't know much about water polo. I would love to learn more." And that's, it's either sitting down, watching some game film with him, going to a couple of practices, seeing what that looks like, just kind of getting that rapport with the coaches, kind of figuring out, okay, this is what the terms mean, this is what the language needs to be when I'm formatting these recaps, what that looks like, what do I need to focus on in these recaps to kind of get the highlights out of what I'm looking for, stuff of that nature. Just going to the coaches, and then figuring out, okay, does anybody, excuse me, in the area have unique sports that I do? Can I go and shadow these people? Can I go kind of learn and pick their brains, because they might have more experience than I do. So kind of using those resources of what's in my conference, what's in my state that I can use as well, and figuring out what I can go from there.
Sebastian, I mean, same with you. You know, you have fencing at your institution. Not a lot of people are probably familiar with the rules of fencing and how to cover that. You know, how did you dive into that?
So actually on my first day here, that was kind of the first thing that once my fishing coach just said, I know nothing about this sport whatsoever, so please just teach me. I'm an open book. But it was more just having him just read me kind of like how the results are done, speaking with some students, just how they like their pictures taken during the matches, or just going to a fencing match and just seeing what the environment's like.
Awesome. What can you guys say? And I'll go back to you, Sebastian. You know, even if these are not your primary sports, or in some cases we don't have a choice but to make them our primary sports in one person shops. But how do you learn how to stat everything regardless of what your sport is? What do you do to stay fresh? What would you tell people that maybe, okay, they don't have all the sports, they're not a primary sport for contact for men's or women's soccer, but how do you do that just in case you are called into action if it's a busy day and you have 5 events and you're pulled elsewhere? Like, how do you make sure that you stay on top of what you're doing there?
I try to just plan ahead, trying to keep know what games I have ahead, what's on the schedule this week. So if I have soccer games, knowing that we have to stat 2 soccer games and volleyball game in the evening, and yeah, just try to stay ahead on things.
Mike, how about you?
Also, thankfully for my part, our scheduling is typically easier, so I kind of know I can have some control over what happens.
That's a beautiful thing right there. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at things like a week out in advance, kind of see where my office is at, with events, especially for the weekends. Saturdays is always the busiest day. So one thing that I do with my office is the 2 people that work underneath me, we all know how to stat everything. And that's just doing like practice games online through NCAA live stats, or, familiarizing yourself with Presto or Stat Crew, watching a CSC stat webinar on YouTube or something like that. That's just kind of what always keeps us fresh and keeps, up to date on the rules. Like women's lacrosse, there's 10 new rule changes every year, it seems like, which jumps into the stats as well, that we need to be on top of. So it's just kind of staying up to date on practice games, make sure you're still able to keep up with the game. That's the biggest thing, is keep up with the game, because when you fall behind, that's when things get tough. And if you're not to the point where you can keep up with the game, have like a plan B. Maybe it's somebody to write down everything that what happens, or an additional student worker to do something like that, where you're able to catch up until you are to the point where you're 100% to keep up with it.
Yeah, Sam, we talked about, and Mike brought this up a little bit, but we talked about during our planning session for this call, that there are a lot of resources out there, and that sometimes it's not a bad idea to have those NCAA statistics manuals right by your side. There could be a weird situation in baseball or hockey or whatever. You just need to go back to that. How do you use those resources? The Presto help charts, the NCAA live stats, live videos, the CSC webinars that they put out. I know I watched at least a few of them, especially the men's and women's lacrosse ones this year. How do you use those effectively to make sure that you're on top of the sports that you're going to need to cover?
Yeah, I mean, myself, and my two under people that work under me, we all know how to do stats. We all know how to train people how to do stats. So that was a big thing this past year, was just training more people on how to do different things, what to look for. And then with the rules, especially with lacrosse, obviously it's a big thing. Both men's and women's lacrosse are kind of different and same at the same time. So we always have that. We always print off the rule book. We have the rule book in our press box, so we can refer to it if something kind of crazy comes up. Should it be a ground ball? Should it not be a ground ball? What goes into an assist? Should it have been an assist? Like Mike said, we always try to put the action in. So if we have to go back later and change an assist or a goal, that type of thing, we always just can know where it is and just put it in afterwards. Especially with Genius, we do all the training with Genius. We've done all the webinars with CSC. We've done the practice with Presto. For Presto, for baseball and softball, I print out the cheat sheets and I kind of go through and highlight what is a pass ball or a wild pitch, kind of instances that will kind of recur throughout a game, baseball game or a softball game, that are kind of things that you might not remember in the moment. But if you write it in on those kind of cheat sheets, and then I laminate all of those as well, because we do have press box that's not covered by everything. So I always make sure that we have, the resources just in case I'm not there or my assistant has a question on, rules, what's a hit, what's an error, that type of thing. We always have those rule books. We always have the kind of helpful tips, things to kind of remember that we always utilize while we're doing these games.
And one thing that Sam brought up is you can always change something later too. So put in kind of what you think it is, and then maybe write down on a scrap piece of paper what inning, who was up at bat, or what quarter, how much time was left on the clock. And then that's when you can go look at a review of your live stream or talk to your coach and figure out what it actually is if you're unsure on it. And you can always make that change later.
There we go. Sebastian, what do you find most useful when it comes to those resources?
Yeah, I know Stacker is kind of taboo now, but those cheat sheets were like trying to save my life some games. In certain situations, like baseball, you get a weird double play, but the cheat sheet definitely helped. Or just going through, I speak to my coach sometimes if a weird play happens in another sport, that always help me out. Also, sometimes having a nice person right next to you, like I know some of you know Kevin Ross from Genius Sports. He's done some games for us this year through the Community Athletic Conference, so he's always knows the what to enter into Genius Sports.
Awesome. You guys brought up coaches as a great resource a couple of times. If you're new to a new sport, what can you talk about, just the questions that you ask them, or maybe how good of an idea it is to actually ask them, hey, can I sit down, watch some game film with you, and really just kind of pick your brain? If you're watching soccer, okay, maybe show me an example of what a true double assist is. I know that's kind of a maybe a taboo or a gray area where some coaches don't believe that there's a double assist in soccer, but it can happen. So, or like you said, situations where there's ground balls or CTs or no CTs or no ground balls. What kind of resource can a coach be when it comes to that? How can they be just an invaluable tool to be able to help us learn the sports? Sam, I'll let you start with this one.
Yeah, I'll talk lacrosse specifically, since there's so many different rules with women's and men's lacrosse. My men's lacrosse coach has been here basically since the program started, so he knows a lot about lacrosse and stuff like that. So I always ask him, if there's something wrong or if there's something that needs to be changed, let me know, and then he'll usually send me an email. It's not usually a long email, just minor changes after a home game on Saturday. Change the ground ball to this. This should have been a creative or a successful clear. And then since we do record everything to YouTube, I go back and I put it up on my computer while I'm making the corrections. I go to because he'll put the exact time of when the incident happens, so I can put it up on YouTube and see what he's looking at and then kind of learn for myself. And then if I have any more questions or need any more clarification, I go to him and I'll ask him, why is this, clear, and why is this not clear? Things of that nature. Why is there a ground ball here? When did you change goalies? That type of thing. So he kind of explains it to me, and then I kind of learn, okay, this is what I need to look for, or this penalty is always a 1-minute penalty, no matter what you put in, or you're always going to be a man up. You're never going to be, 2-man up or 3-man up, that type of thing. So he just kind of just explains it to me. He's very good at, making sure that I understand like what's going on, and then I can communicate it to my staff if I'm not there as well, especially with men's and women's lacrosse. There's always, baseball or softball going on or volleyball going on at the same time. So I'm not always there at the game. So I'm making sure my staff understands what I'm looking at and what our coaches are looking at as well. And then at in between halves, I always tell the coaches, whoever it is, if there's an assist that's wrong or if there's a goal that's wrong, let me know so I can change it right away. I'll see you after the game. You can tell me, hey, this should have been assist for number 12 instead of 2, that type of thing, because they're at ground level. I'm up above ground level, so they can see some things better than I can sometimes. So I always, tell them that when I meet them to get their starters.
Mike, you came from a school that didn't have hockey to a school that's extremely good at hockey. Like, how was your relationship with your coach in being able to kind of take that sport, grasp the understanding of everything, and be able to score successfully?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what helped was going in, I was just a huge sports fan to begin with, so I had the grasp on hockey. But then it was just kind of teaching myself the system and then talking to him more about, assists and everything like that, what counts as a secondary assist. And, the thing with hockey is you can skate around with the puck for 5 minutes as long as it doesn't change possession and pass it to someone else, that one person gets an assist. So coaches are just a huge resource, and our coach is very communicative with me that if I bring him stats at the end of the first period and I missed an assist or it should have gone to somebody else, he'll just shoot me a text and say, hey, just so you know, first goal, secondary assist should have gone to number 20 instead of number 17. Because sometimes, like Sam was saying, you're not down there. So the boards get in your way when it comes to hockey, or, it kicks off the toe of someone's skate, something like that. Something very simple and little like that can change the scoring summary on there. So it's just building good relationships with your coaches where they feel comfortable coming to you to say like, hey, we're wrong on this. This just needs to be the change. Or you going to them saying, hey, I'm unsure on this play. What did you guys see?
Sebastian, how do you work alongside your coaches there in New York City to be able to cover things?
I just kind of established a good relationship with my coaches. Like during games, it is during soccer for the assists, I kind of go up to them, hey, who is that assist? He'll tell me. Baseball, if it's double play, get the numbers. I just kind of have a really good, open, honest relationship with our coaches. Sometimes I like to pick assistant coaches. That's because the head coach may be busy during a game, so the assistant coach on the side can just ask them a question really quick.
Keep me to myself. That's a rookie mistake. We have an anonymous attendee saying that, read the rule book, specifically the stat sections of the rule book. Sometimes coaches aren't super familiar with it. I know when I was learning men's lacrosse for the first time, I read that manual front and back seemingly every day. Do you guys find that useful? Do you read the manuals? Do you make sure every year when you go into the new season that you're checking to see if there's any rule changes? And if you do, what are maybe some tips or tricks to really kind of highlight or emphasize the most important stuff in that? Sebastian, is that something you do?
I go over the rule book, but I need to see it like in the real time for me to like actually make the adjustment. Like I need that, like soccer was a bunch of rule changes last year, so I just needed to see it actually happen first, then I can know what to do.
Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same exact way. And it's also communicating like with your coach too. He knows more of the rules side of it, but how does it get inputted as well. We brought up lacrosse multiple times, and one thing that I was always taught, it's a successful clear as soon as the ball crosses the 50-yard line in men's lacrosse. It's actually not true. They need to get kind of into a position where they're setting up their offense, or they pass the 50 and then complete another pass or something like that. That's what actually makes it a successful clear, because they could be one step over the 50 and then pass and turn the ball over. That wouldn't be a clear then a turnover. That would just be unsuccessful clear with a turnover with it. So yeah, it's kind of reading the stat manuals, what's new for the year. A lot of the sports kind of do a 2-year thing, which rules will change every 2 years or something like that. So yeah, it's just kind of what are you unsure of, and then let's go look that up in the rule book and then the statistical manual as well.
Sam?
My coaches are pretty good at letting me know if there's any new rule changes once, because we have a bunch of our coaches that are on some of these committees as well, so they get the news before I will get the news. So they'll either send me the new rule book, or they'll just give me a kind of a heads up. Hey, this is changing. It's now, 60 minutes on or 60 seconds on the shot clock instead of 35 or whatever it might be. They kind of let me know ahead of time, so I can tell those people that are working those games, hey, just to let you know, or whoever the kind of working team for our event is, I can tell them as well, whoever's working the shot clock or the game clock, you need to put it to this instead of that. So I always know ahead of time, which is always good. And then once I actually get the rule book, I won't go through it, thoroughly, but I will look for what those new rules are, and then kind of just brush up on, things that might be, the instances where they might be a little bit difficult, with stuff like that. So, and then, like I said, I always print out the rule book for the games of the first couple games as well, and just keep it up in our press box.
This is something we also talked kind of about on our planning call, that from my experience, and I keep bringing up lacrosse, but it's the emerging sport. It's booming across the country, and it's one that's really kind of unfamiliar with a lot of people that watch it, or that are trying to learn how to score it. We were brought up watching baseball and basketball and football, but not necessarily lacrosse. So it's kind of a new world to anyone that has to hop into it. But one of the things I did when I was first learning it was I went on the road with the team before my first home game. I asked the visiting SID, hey, can I watch you? Can I come and see how you guys do it as a crew? I brought my computer. There was a lot of yellow flags in Stat Crew. I was not doing a very good job, but it was the experience, at least seeing how a successful, veteran in the field that's done many games does it. Have you guys done that in the past? Do you find anything that you could really gain from that kind of experience? Sam, I'll throw it back to you and see if you have a kind of experience doing this, or maybe some tips that might kind of be around the same thing, but maybe a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely done that before. I can't think of any kind of sport that kind of reaches out to me, but I've had people come to me and shadow me for various sports. My assistant now, when he was at a previous school, he wanted to learn football, and he came to a couple football games in the fall just to see what it looks like for stat wise, what it looks like for a crazy kind of football event, what that kind of calling, what that looks like, what inputting looks like. And then once he got here, he kind of stepped into that calling role as well. I always go back to lacrosse because that's kind of the crazy one. I have a outsourced person that's a wizard at both men's and women's lacrosse. So I have her come here for those first like 2 home games, either stat or call. So my person that either my assistant or whoever's working, my student worker, can learn how to either stat or call, so that when we progress further in the season, we are not relying on this outsourced person, and I can use this other outsourced person at different events on campus if needed. So that's one of the things that I use. I try to help out and just make sure everybody knows what's going on, or can figure out what needs to be statted correctly. That could be taking my group to a different event, on a conference event. I've done that in the past as well, just to get everybody kind of learning what needs to be statted, what needs to be called, and stuff like that.
Feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A session. We will, like I said, go through them as we go and also have some time at the end to answer some questions. But Sebastian, same question to you. Have you done anything? Have you gone to see how other people kind of operated, how different schools or different SIDs kind of go about their business and try to take that and apply it to your skill or your trade set?
Definitely. When like junior sports first came out, a lot of our conference SIDs kind of had like an open session. So I just kind of came by on my laptop, try to practice as much as possible. For one example, like when I first started in this position, I had a men's soccer game. It's probably a disaster. Everything crashed, Wi-Fi hotspot crashed. We were playing NYU, so Jeff Bernstein kind of like talked me over the phone, just had to fix everything, putting the rosters back in. So it's really good. It was a good learning experience.
Mike?
Yeah, I haven't really been in a situation so much as going to travel to see how someone does it, but it's talking like with some of the SIDs in my conference, like Nick Duffy down at Trine or Alan Babbitt over at Hope. How do they do things? Just kind of run their everyday operations there and game day operations. I've been in a situation where I've been either on the road with someone and I'm doing my thing, they're doing their thing, and they'll just kind of ask like, hey, what'd you think of that play? Or I'll do the same thing if a team's traveling with an SID and I'm kind of a little unsure, I'd be like, hey, what do you think of, what would you put in here? Just to kind of get us both on the same page and maybe they're seeing something I didn't see and all that.
For transition, we've all kind of brought up NLS in the past couple of minutes. We have a question from Nathaniel in the chat, and he asked, with StatCrew being sunset and being fully discontinued, with live stats taking over, is it still worth it to learn or focus on just learning Genius as expand the sport offerings? I'll ask the question of all three of you, but personally myself, I still think if you have a computer that can actually run it and hasn't crashed and lost everything like mine did in January, which made tennis a lot of fun for the first couple months. I think it's still valuable to learn it. You're still going to go to some schools that, especially with maybe some athletic communications professionals that have been in the industry for quite a while, they still prefer it. They really like using StatCrew, and StatCrew transfers really well to Presto, which until, Genius develops baseball and softball and lacrosse, as those StatCrew machines retire, as they go away permanently, Presto is going to be your next best option. I think those skills really transfer over. Do you guys find any use in still using StatCrew, or at least having those skills, knowing that we still might be waiting a few years before NLS or Genius fully has all of our offerings ready to go? Sebastian, what do you think?
It's definitely worth learning to use it, because I think it should be mandated soon. I mean, I heard that from the pipeline, but I was using StatCrew this year just because I just didn't feel like changing. But next year I will be using it, so it's definitely worth learning. I've learned before, I just not as comfortable using it yet in the game.
Sam?
I would say definitely. I still use StatCrew for we primarily use Presto for baseball, softball, but there's always the instance where I can't get a pitcher that went to first base or something crazy happened where the codes don't line up with what I'm putting into Presto. So I will import the game into StatCrew where I know how to do it and fix it that way, and then upload the XMLs and stuff like that to my site that way. So just kind of knowing both kind of systems, both StatCrew and Presto and Genius, all of those kind of knowing how they operate, they all kind of work with each other in kind of an aspect, especially with Presto and StatCrew. You can import like I said, a Presto file into StatCrew and then fix it with if you know StatCrew more, fix it how you need to. So I've done that several times, and then kind of some of our SIDs still use StatCrew. So asking for, cap files or that type of thing, telling, my assistant or knowing how to do that as well, is always useful as well.
Mike, what about you up in Michigan?
Yeah, I definitely, I really don't use StatCrew too much because I'm more of the Presto side of things, and then I'll use Genius, but it's definitely beneficial. Like the only sport I really use StatCrew for is tennis. But then when we had that spike mark clipped issue for golf to start the year, Stat Crew really came in handy for that. But yeah, so I definitely think it's very beneficial. And like everyone's been saying, that it's the same keystrokes for Presto as well. It's just kind of whatever system you're more comfortable with. And like Sam was saying, they all do work hand in hand with each other.
So we talked a lot about sports that are a little bit easier to cover, have more defined record books, I would say, that are the quote unquote scoring sports, but you still have the Olympic sports, you still have track and field, you still have swim and dive, you still have cross country. Those sports might be a little bit harder to cover a little bit. You're not necessarily more familiar. There's so many runners in track and field, it's hard to keep track on who set a personal record or who broke, a Division III mark or something like that. What do you guys do to ask your coaches to make sure that they're in line with that stuff, especially at smaller shops where you don't have time to go over each and every one of the 80 track and field members and what their personal best is in an event? What do you do? What do you ask from them to be able to cover that sport correctly and make sure that the student athletes, if they break a record, you still want to do that. You don't want to find out later on Instagram or something that they did that. You want to be able to put that in a press release or put out your own graphics. So Mike, what do you think? What do you do? What do you ask for coaches from some of the non-traditional sports that don't necessarily have a super strict reporting structure, or might be just a little bit harder to keep tabs on records and all that stuff?
Yeah, definitely. One of the deals we came up with our track and cross country coach is we post a recap the day after, actually. So if they compete on a Friday or Saturday, or maybe it's a 2-day event for both days, the recap will come after, and they'll kind of talk with their athletes for us and say like, hey, you broke a PR today, something like that. And then we can always go and look and say, wait, that time looks pretty good. Let's just double check our records really quick. And it gives us a little bit more time to see if they broke a record on our end. Maybe they set a record for the NCAA or something like that. But then we can also promote those personal bests by the coach passing along those informations. So it's definitely just kind of working with them to see what's the best communication process, because especially a sport like track and field, there's teams that have 30 kids on the team. There's some teams that have 60 kids. There's some teams that have 150 kids. You're obviously not going to know everyone's personal best if you have a roster of 150. So it's working with the coach to figure out the best communication process between the team and your office.
Sebastian?
When it comes to like just tracking like personal best or records, I use TFers for my like recaps for like track and field. It kind of it puts like their personal best. But for some sports, like internally, I still have like paper like records, so it may take a while for me to track a record down. But I just kind of work with our coach. Some of our coaches kind of keep their own databases. I always just have to make sure that they're accurate, but I try to they trying to help out, and then I try to help them out trying to find the records.
What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I would say it all goes by, communication with your coaches. Track and field's one of them. Tennis is another one that kind of our coaches kind of keep their own records for, especially tennis. Our tennis coach, he coaches both men's and women's tennis here. So he has a good idea of, this person's closing in on 100 wins. He kind of lets us know. And then I kind of just triple check it as well. And then with track and field, it's the same thing. Our coaches are usually communicating with us on this guy might have a good PR, or he might have good race, or he might throw well at this event. Just keep it on our radar as well. But when those things happen where they're PRs or school records, they let us know so we can get those graphics out and put that in our recap as well.
Perfect. Don't forget to drop any of the questions that you have in the Q&A section of the Zoom call. We'll make sure to get to them. We're going to get to a couple more too. We talked about coaches, obviously, just right now, a little bit earlier in the call too. Yesterday, in our second seminar, we talked about building confidence, and obviously talking with the coach can somewhat be intimidating at times, especially if they're one of the more like nose to the grindstone, serious, kind of just let's go about and, get some wins kind of coach. How do you deal with them? How do you deal with a coach that maybe is questioning your calls, thinks that a ground ball wasn't a ground ball, or thinks that there should be 3 or 4 more CTs, or maybe he disagrees with an error that you charged to the shortstop that you thought was one and he thought it was a base hit. How do you each kind of deal with that? What are some tips that you could tell to kind of either hold your ground or maybe hear them out, have a good rational conversation, maybe go back and look at things, but not get pushed around to the point where coach comes, he has a request or he or she has a request, and then you just immediately make it because you just kind of want to avoid the conflict. Sam, what do you do in that situation at Carthage?
Yeah, I mean, baseball, softball, that's a big one. Hits or errors. I usually, just talk with my coach afterwards, or if it's the assistant coach that's, questioning some things, or if it's our pitching coach that's questioning who gets the win, who gets the loss, or this person should have 4 earned runs instead of 5, that type of thing. I always go to that person and I have a conversation with them. What are they looking at? What do I see? And then we kind of just kind of have a dialogue of what should it be, and then we kind of go from there. So it's kind of a yin and yang, kind of give and take, that type of thing. Hear them out, they hear me out, and then we come to an agreement on most of the things that are getting brought up, especially for baseball, softball, lacrosse is another one, ground balls, successful clear, not successful clear, that type of thing as well.
Sebastian?
I just try to have a conversation with our coaches when that kind of happens. I've had it happen a lot actually, but I let them give a rationale, but ultimately I'm just gonna rule on it, my decision.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm open to the dialogue with our coaches as well. I'll plead why I think it is what I put, and they can come back to me. The big thing with it is with technology on the coaching end, there's huddle assist, there's volumetrics, there's all these, coaching and film things that will try to stat the game for them as well. So I have coaches coming to me sometimes saying, oh, someone should have 3 more kills, someone should have 2 more caused turnovers in lacrosse, something like that. And then that's when I kind of have to challenge them and say, well, we don't stat games by just telling things. We actually need to put a plan. If there's another kill in volleyball, there's got to be an assist, and sometimes there's got to be a dig with that. If there's a caused turnover, who on the other team is turning the ball over? There's things that go hand in hand with the play, and we're not just telling things. And I think once I do that, and they actually start to break down their film rather than just listening to what their computer system's telling me or telling them, they'll actually be like, oh wait, no, maybe he was right here, maybe he was maybe we're wrong here, but we're right on this one. Let's look at the film together and figure out what it actually is.
Volleyball is a sport that can get really crazy real quick, especially if there's several block continuations, thrown together in a row. It can get really tough to not fall behind. And this is something I know that we talked about on our planning call, but what are some of your guys' tips when it does get crazy? There is a basketball exchange where there's 4 turnovers in the span of 10 seconds, and you're trying to make sure that everything's going okay. It's easy to fall behind sometimes though too. What are some of your tips and tricks to make sure that you're staying on top of the action, or that maybe it is okay to fall behind a little bit, but you put some tools in that will allow you to catch up quickly during the next timeout or something like that? Sam?
Basketball specifically, I just put it in as best as I can. And then if there's a timeout or if it's at halftime, I will go back and, look at it. Like I said, we do everything, live stream everything on YouTube. So I have the games up on a different tab. So I can go back, if I miss something, I can go back and try to change it real quick. But with using Genius, the flag feature is fantastic. So it lets me know, okay, I can manually flag some stuff, so I can go back and fix it afterwards. So that happens a lot, not a lot during basketball, but that's a good helpful tool, especially those crazy when it's 2 turnovers or 3 turnovers in 30 seconds. What does that look like? Who got what? So I usually try to put those in as best as I can, and then go back and fix it later during kind of a dull time or a lull time, where I can figure that out, especially substitutions too. If I miss a substitution, I can use that YouTube and go back and see who came in when and go from there.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, that insert before or insert after play in all the stat systems is huge. You know, if you miss something, that's okay, you know, but always have a sheet of scratch paper with you and with a pen. And I always write down the time it happened, or in volleyball, what point it happened on, or in baseball, what inning, who was up to bat, all that kind of stuff. So then you can go and look at the replay on your YouTube stream or Boxcast, whatever it is that your school uses. And then you can actually go and see then what happened, and then just go edit the play and insert it later. It's okay to fall behind here and there, but just have your plan B on what you're going to do in the event you fall behind. Like I said, the thing that I do is I have my scratch sheet of paper with me, and I write down the time that play happened, and I'll go and review it later.
Sebastian, you kind of follow the same thing, or do you have a little bit different of approach?
I follow along. I have a pad of paper, the pen, game film. I have two. Yeah, God, that has saved me plenty of times this year.
Something
Especially
that
when there's those long rallies.
Yeah, long rallies, especially in women's volleyball, they can get really hectic, and especially like I said, if there's like 2 or 3 block continuations at the same time or in this in continuous order, that can really throw you off a little bit. Talking about stuff that we rely on, obviously we all rely on our student workers. A lot of us, especially from any level, there's student workers that are helping call, that are helping stat, that are helping do anything, scribe along with it to make sure that we're catching up if it's, football or lacrosse, and an SID implements that kind of stuff. Talk to me, guys, about how you train your student workers, how you get them to follow along with the game, and kind of the little minutia that we have to learn that they might not be aware of. And how do you ultimately learn how to trust them and rely on them during in-game situations? Sebastian, do you have any experience with that, and how do you go about training yours?
So I've been fortunate where I've had some students already come into college and they know how to do like a volleyball score sheet. They know how to do a basketball book. They know how to do a baseball book. So I've been fortunate. And then I have them teach other students. And that a lot of people don't like, they haven't gravitated towards it. So they try to pick the easy job. So maybe camera or like taking pictures. But yeah, so I've been fortunate, Plus now there's an app now for volleyball scoring.
Mike, I know you have to have a small army up in Adrian to cover all the sports that you guys have. What do you do to get your student workers into a place where you can, that maybe, hey, ultimately you can train them at NLS and you can step aside if you need to do something, that the game is going to go off without too many or no issues at all?
Yeah, definitely. Some things I'll do is like I'll sit and watch game film with them and explain what's what. What's a dig, what's a set, what's a kill, then what's an air, what's a continue, what's an over, all that kind of stuff. So that way they're familiarizing themselves with the actions. And then once they're kind of getting more comfortable, that's when we'll sit down and we'll train a practice session on NLS or something. Those practice games are huge when it comes to training. I teach everyone using those practice games. And even like with Presto, they have a practice Presto stat link and everything just to familiarize yourself with it. And then you can do your own game on YouTube or something like that. So that's always big.
Sam?
I am very fortunate here that all of our athletic events are covered by athletic teams that are not in session. So our women's volleyball team or games are covered by our men's volleyball team. So they already know how to call for me, basically. I just got to tell them I need it in this order. Don't worry about, the overs or anything like that. So they already kind of have a knowledge of what I'm looking for. So that's really beneficial. And then like women's soccer covers women's lacrosse. So kind of training those people on what I'm looking for. We go through film, we go through, different things of that nature, just to tell them what I'm looking for or what you need to look for, because they also run the shot clock and the game clock. So when you need to switch it, when you need to not and stop and stuff like that. So I'm really fortunate in that aspect. I do have some student workers that were athletes in high school, so they come in with the knowledge of knowing basketball already, or knowing softball, or even knowing volleyball. So getting them, same thing, getting them to get it into the order of what I need or what I'm looking for. We go through game film, we do the Genius practice, we do the Presto practice, we do all the practices basically. Pull up a game, even if it's if I can't find a game, or even going to, like we have Marquette that's 45 minutes away from here, Milwaukee as well. We'll go to a game and I'll kind of just call it as is, or we'll go and watch a baseball game somewhere and we'll do the book by hand, so they can understand how that looks as well. So really fortunate here where I can just get it into what I need people to understand, or what I'm looking for out of these athletes or student workers, what they need to give me so I can put it in correctly.
Ethan asked a question that's somewhat topical, somewhat off topic, but still important for us to cover, I think, especially for those young professionals that are hopping into a position where they are, maybe fresh out of college or fresh off a GA spot, and now all of a sudden they're the boss. And so they got to make the tough decisions. They got to answer or handle some difficult situations. But how do you guys handle student workers that don't show up to their shifts? Obviously, we just talked about that. We really rely on them to get our jobs done. We need that caller. We need those eyes on the court. We need people to be able to help broadcast or help do the book or something like that. How do you guys handle those kind of situations? Well, kind of also understanding that they're college kids and sometimes some things come up, whether it's a test, or they got a project, or maybe it's somebody's birthday and maybe they're going out and celebrating a little bit and just not letting us know. But how do you guys handle those situations? Obviously, each is a little bit different in your situations. Mike?
Yeah, so one thing that I do is the way I schedule my student workers, number one, is we just have a group meet. And I'll say on Monday or Sunday, depending on when the first game is, hey, here's the games for the week. This is how many people I need at each one. And then I allow them to kind of do first come, first serve, signing up for it. And then they get their hours that way. If there's a game where no one signs up for, I'll kind of start texting people individually saying, hey, are you able to make it? Something like that. I also say let's say the game starts at 1:00. Hey, I need you there at 12:30 or 12:45. That way, if it's kind of getting to that point where there's 10 minutes on the warm-up clock and you're not here, I can start texting you or calling you saying, hey, where are you? Give me an update. If they don't respond, then they don't show up. That's a conversation, number one, to have with them later. But number two, like I'll kind of walk up to my coach real quick and be like, hey, do you have an injured player on the bench, or do you have someone on the JV team that's not playing or not dressing in the stands that wouldn't mind helping me, like point them out, and I'll go talk to them while you're preparing for your game. But just kind of seeing who's there. Is there someone else in the press box that can do dual positions, like the PA announcer or something, or same thing at the scores table for basketball.
Sebastian?
I've definitely run into this issue a lot. Our AD/baseball coach kind of oversees the student workers, so he's kind of schedules it, but we always run into issues with people last minute call outs, or I can't make it. So we just try to get through it the best we can, but ultimately if it keeps happening, I think it's a pattern. We just kind of have to move on from them and try to get somebody else who's willing to do it. But we understand, like, they're college students, they have other lives, they want to experience life, but it's you have to like commit to something if you want to commit to it.
Sam, will let you round it out.
I do the same thing Mike does. I have a group meet with all my student workers. We have Monday meetings, Zoom meetings. We go through what's going on this week, what times are for everything, and then they see that and they can plan accordingly, especially for graphics wise, especially for scheduling wise, photography wise as well. But spring sports in the state of Wisconsin is always fun. It's always interesting to kind of work. So that's how I keep my student workers updated with baseball and softball rainouts. Obviously, lacrosse will play in anything. Baseball, softball, if there's a rainout that's going to happen, I let my student workers know that so they can adjust accordingly, or they can go and work different events on campus or not work at all, depending on what's going on campus. But group me is a big one. Just kind of communicating with those student workers. If someone doesn't show, obviously having a conversation with them afterwards, why you didn't show, what happened, what are you doing? Because you never know what's going on with these student workers as well. They might have some personal issues they might be getting through. We've had a couple student workers that had deaths in the family just last minute, and they came up to me and say, hey, I have to go, I need to go home, that type of thing. So it's always, working on the fly. Okay, I can, I can do PA, I can do stats. If it's a PA person that's, leaving, I can do PA for, baseball, softball, or whatever, or I can do both, stat and PA, whatever is going on. I just kind of adjust as needed. Same with my assistant and same with my G as well. So we just kind of make sure we're in a conversation and make sure that communication between myself and that student workers is always open in case something crazy comes up where, there's cancellation or there's a rain out.
Perfect. We got about 10 more minutes left in our first session of day 2. So if you have any questions that you want that are on the top of your mind, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We'll fire through them as quickly as we can. Mike brings up a good question that's not necessarily about in-game statistics or learning that side of things, but is also equally as important. That's how do we approach writing articles, especially recaps, for sports that we're less familiar with. Mike, know that you have a lot of experience up there with, again, sports that probably a lot of us aren't familiar with. How do you go about writing those recaps, getting familiar, making sure those student athletes get the same amount of coverage that somebody on the football team or basketball team would do?
Yeah, I mean, like we've been saying this entire call right now, it's your coaches are your friends. Call them, shoot them a text, shoot them an email, and just say, hey, like, how do we do today? Because some of the sports that I deal with on the club side of it, there's no SID there to stat the game, or there is no stat system, something like that. So rugby is the perfect example of that. There's no stat system for rugby. So when we go on the road and the school we're playing doesn't cover rugby the way that we cover rugby, I just kind of ask our coach, like, hey, can you just keep a scoring summary in your phone or on a notepad or something, and then shoot us a text or an email afterwards and let us know what happened and who scored what and all that kind of stuff. If there was an award, some of these club sports that we deal with, they have coaches associations that don't have like a media list that we would be on, like, track and field or baseball does and stuff like that. So it's just, hey, like, any information, pass it our way. And then based on that information, you can come back and you can ask their questions. I just had a conversation with our rowing coach the other day. We were at the club national championship, and there were timing results online, but there was a couple of questions I had with it. So I just said, hey, can I tell you real quick, and this is what I'm seeing. Am I correct on this? Or is there anything to add to it?
Sebastian, Sam, anything to add to that?
I just try to kind of maybe I write kind of like a basic recap, like some like for fantasy, for example. I kind of write like a basic recap, and then I kind of go to our coach. Can you like add some nuances? Like, did anybody have a great performance at the meet? So, to just add more information to it. But then, yeah, that's just kind of what I kind of just bounce off the coach, like what was he want to recap.
Sam?
I also look at what other schools are writing about. Just kind of looking at water polo specifically. I have another conference school that also covers water polo, so I'll go and look and see what they're writing about, what they're kind of touching on, and then I'll talk to my coach. My coach is new this year, so when I first met with him, he said, how much information do you want? And I said, give me all the information you want. If I use it or if I don't use it, I will take anything that you give me, steals, shots, anything that you kind of keep track of during a game. I will use it, or if I don't feel like it's necessary, I won't use it. But all the information is always welcome. I'm not gonna, say stop you giving me all this information. So I usually, like I said, just going through the coaches and asking them what they want to cover and what I should look for as well.
Lucas asks a question, Bet, what is the best piece of advice you've received or could give about building relationships with coaches? The advice I would give you is go back and look at yesterday's call on YouTube and the CSC website when we did talk about confidence in building those relationships. The call with a few of our colleagues was amazing. So if you want to go back and check that out, if that was something you did not attend yesterday, but I'll open that question up to this panel too. What is some of the best pieces of advice, or what is something that you could give to somebody when it comes to building a relationship with a coach that has been successful with you guys? Sebastian, I'll let you start.
I just try to have patience with some coaches. just trying to be open with them, just kind of explaining any situation with them, and just kind of hear them out. But ultimately, the job has to be done.
Sam?
I like to put my face in front of these coaches and make sure that they know, where my office is, first of all, and where I can be available if they have any questions, or even just asking them how they're doing. I'll usually, if they had a big win, I'll kind of allude to that if I'm just having a kind of conversation with them. But I always, if they email me and ask me a question, I usually try and go and find them first before I respond to the email, or if I can't find them, then I'll respond to the email, or I'll shoot them a text, or I'll call them if it's like a long-winded email that I need to send out. So I always try to put myself in front of the coaches first so that they know that I'm available and that they can see me face to face and we can have a dialogue that way.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm the same exact way. I mean, the more conversations I have with my coaches are through, in-person interactions rather than over the phone or hiding behind an email, something like that. One thing with, kind of these newer sports or the lesser known sports is, when I first introduce myself to them that, hey, I'm your contact, and I'll be straight up honest with them. I'll be like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm not as well-rounded on your sport that you are. So please, learn. Like, I'll ask you questions. I think being open and honest with them will kind of make them, a little at ease if you make a mistake. It kind of be more of a conversation rather than them coming and yelling at you or something like that. One thing, I try to make sure that my coaches know is, like, I don't work for my coaches. I work with my coaches. So if I have a coach, coming at me, telling me to do something, like, I have the confidence to say, whoa, that's not how we do things here. Like, I work with your team. I don't work for you. But all that is a lot easier when you do things face to face.
We have one last question in the Q&A before I wrap up. Ethan says that baseball and softball areas are the most challenging for him. What are some places that we should tell him to look, or, how to identify them? One place that I actually look when I'm just trying to learn new plays or see different outcomes, there's a great Twitter account. I will never call it X, so just Twitter. MLB scoring decisions. They walk through plays, especially ones that have been reversed in the past, and explain to you exactly why. They show you video, they break it down very good ways. There's a lot of YouTube stuff, but then there's also just talking to the coaches, like we brought up too, and ask them what they thought about this play and ask them for specific advice. Just kind of asking them to be impartial a little bit and say, hey, why would you do this? But Mike, Sebastian, Sam, do you guys have any tips or tricks or other sites that they could visit to kind of hone in on some of those sports? Because baseball and softball, a lot of weird things can happen for such a simple sport.
Yeah, I always lean on the side of giving a hit. I think when it comes to giving errors versus a hit in baseball, softball is like the biggest judgment call from a statistician standpoint in sports. So like one thing, the kind of the easier ones for hits versus errors, if someone's got to dive for it and misses it or it tips off their glove, that's a hit. And then same thing with the sun. The sun can't cause an error. If the outfielder loses the ball in the sun, it lands right next to him, or the third base. We had an instance a couple years ago. Third baseman picked up a ground ball, threw it to the first baseman, but where the sun was, the first baseman didn't see it, went right by him. We had to give that a hit because the sun can't cause an error. So I definitely think the diving and the sun are kind of the two biggest things that'll kind of help determine what's a hit and what's but also just kind of go with your best judgment. And like we've been talking about this whole time, a lot of things can be changed later after talking with a coach or talking with the player or maybe even an umpire in the situation.
Sebastian?
I just kind of go my gut feeling. If it was a hit or an error, usually I like to give my guys hits. So usually it's a hit 9 times out of 10. But I also ask my coach, like, was that a hit or an error? And that's the final ruling.
What about you, Sam?
I got players in my phone still asking for hits on errors I gave this year. So it's going out as error. They want some end of the season award, so they're trying to beef up their stats. It's too late.
Sam?
There's a great Facebook group. I think it's Athletic Communications Help. So they a bunch of SIDs throughout the US will ask, if this is a hit or an error. And that's a good tool that I kind of look at. I don't usually ask questions. I usually just look at it and kind of either give my judgment or help and kind of or just read what people are saying so I can kind of learn from that as well. That's a great tool. And then I usually just ask my coaches if it's a super crazy play where I really don't know, or any of my press box workers don't know as well. I usually ask my coaches.
Last time, I swear. We have one question that snuck in, so we'll answer this and we'll wrap things up. Noah says, kind of piggybacking off of Ethan's question, how would you encourage students to volunteer and gain experience in the college sports setting? Feel that students at some schools are just unwilling to work when they can be very valuable opportunities for young professionals. I know for myself, volunteering was big. I was able to get into a lot of situations I never thought I was going to be into. Sat courtside for the 2015 NCAA Final Four and championship game because of it. Was able to really learn and network. I think that's the biggest thing. You can learn a lot of different things, but more importantly, you can meet a whole lot of different people that could open different doors. You'll never know when you're going out for a different job and you know somebody, you have a connection that might be able to help you out. But Mike, Sebastian, Sam, we'll wrap up with this one, but how are networking and volunteering opportunities big, and how can our young professionals really use that to take a big step in their career?
I would definitely promote it to them as this is something to put on your resume. Like, this is real life experience that not many people are getting the opportunity to do. Some of the things that I do is I'll email the sport management professors or the communications professors, and I'll say, hey, can I come speak in like one of your intro classes? And I'll promote my office as potential internships, and for work study as well. Like, hey, you can also get paid to do this. One thing, when I was a student, I went to Loris College, which is also Division III. Our intro class, we had to volunteer for 3 games, whether it was working with the SIDs in the press box, whether it was running the scoreboard, or whether it was just, being a ball chaser for a soccer game. So maybe talk with some professors and be like, hey, can you make this like a 10-point assignment to give somebody real world experience, because it benefits them for their resume. It also can benefit them for a quick 10 points. And then it also kind of helps your office out as well when it comes to staffing events.
Sebastian?
For me, I'm still trying to figure out how to get more students involved. Nowadays, I just feel like students they don't look for an opportunity. There's like a paycheck attached to it. So I'm still trying to look for different opportunities. Like I've spoken with some of our journalism classes, photography classes. They all just want to get paid right after the game. It doesn't really work that way. So still looking.
I do basically what Mike does. I'll have a good rapport with our, communications group, our sports management classes as well. I also say this is, we have one of the best seats in the house, especially for our, national championship men's volleyball team. You're basically on press row for, if we're hosting again, or if we're, on a good championship run. A lot of our student workers that have come to work with me really love that atmosphere. They like to be on the press, like the press box, not the press box, but the press row basically, and stuff like that. So they can, they can see things and they can hear things, or they can experience things on a different level than you would as if you were seeing it as a fan. So that's one of the things that I kind of promote as well. You're going to hear the ins and outs, or you're going to get a new kind of rapport of what that kind of looks like from a different aspect. So it's a kind of newer thing. And then obviously it's a resume builder as well.
Mike, Sebastian, Sam, thank you guys so much for your insights, for your advice, for just being on the panel today and really helping out. Just tell people about our topic and push the education forward. Again, the session will be on demand later on our CSC website and our YouTube channel. We have a great session, a CSC U Camp/Summit first later today at 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern. It's going to be a networking session. It's going to be very, very interactive. Going to be able to ask a lot of questions, get to know your fellow summiters. You're going to be able to know some of the panelists, be able to hop from room to room and really just kind of pick people's brains and get to know people. Really good way to set up connections. So we hope that you check that out. Make sure to look at the schedule for other live sessions or to be able to go back and watch the on demand later on a different day. But again, Mike, Sebastian, Sam, thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you guys for attending and with all your guys' questions. We hope you have a great rest of your day. We hope to see you here at 3:30 Eastern. Have a good day.